It is the final word daily, Sri Lanka Australia Daily, second test match here at Galle. Adam Collins with you, Bharat Sundaresan with me. We're here with CBUS Super and we're here with Maurice Blackburn Lawyers. More about both of them later. Baz, no 30-second summary unless we want to wrap up the game of cricket we played a couple of days ago, but we'll save that kind of indulgent chat for another show. Hot here throughout. Pitch, they could have played on it 3 days ago. It is so dry out there at the moment, which in all probability will inform selection with Australia. Vibes say to me Cooper Connolly's playing.
Yeah, vibes based on how they trained yesterday. They're still to come here and maybe have an optional session today. We'll have to see. It's so hot that it wasn't an extended training session for them yesterday. It was an all-in, but clearly the coaches had sent a diktat out to the players to take it easy, not overdo it, because it was not just hot, it was still, so it was humid. It felt like it was suffocating heat, very similar to when we played the game, but like you said, we'll indulge ourselves later. And yeah, I think the pitch will have a big role to play in this. We stood right underneath the Sri Lankan dressing room. I'm sure a couple of them are listening keenly to what we have to say about that pitch, but you're right. I mean, this has all the makings of being one of those where the spinners will come into play much quicker. It's been dry and it's so different this week in terms of the weather. There is cloud around, but not that thick milkshakey cloud cover we saw throughout the first week we were here. The sun's been beating down on it, so it can only break up, right?
And it means that with Australia, they've got different combinations they could go to, but let's call it Path A, Path B. Path A is the one where he essentially replaces Todd Murphy, and they stick with the same top seven. But we asked Steve Smith a question in our radio interview before where he kind of cut me off and went, well, he could also be in addition to the three spinners. And you read the tea leaves here in the presser 10 minutes earlier. So we're patching stuff together here, right? There's no news as such, but he talked about the top six being locked in. So Labuschagne certainly playing, but he didn't say the top seven. And Webster was carded at 7 last week. So I think based on those two bits of information, Smith jumping in and volunteering that Connolly could play surplus to the three spinners and not locking in the top 7, I think it's more likely that he actually plays for Bo Webster.
Andrew McDonald overnight, I think on Jared's show, said the top 7 is fixed in, but you're right, I'm with you there. And there are a few reasons why Cooper Connolly might play and probably should play. He brings the left arm spin into question, and Steve Smith did speak about it. He bowls quite a few good balls from what he's seen of him in Dubai and the nets. There's no first-class bowling career to really talk off. He's bowled less than 100 overs and he's never taken a first-class wicket.
I think he's bowled 9 overs, isn't he? First-class
there you go.
Like that,
So, and the thing with him is he bowls at that kind of pace at which the trajectory and the pace with which Matthew Kuhneman bowls. So having another left-arm spinner really helps. And another thing he did say was, when asked about Bo Webster's bowling, he said, I'll go to Travis Head first. So, so which kind of tells you that Bo Webster is playing more or so as a batter. So if that is what it is, and then they can always bring in Cooper Connolly, have the ultra-aggressive batting that he brings, his brilliant fielding. Bo Webster is also a brilliant catcher, as we know, but Cooper Connolly can provide so much and be that fourth spin option. The more I think about it, it's less likely that he plays in place of Todd Murphy, and I think probably more likely that he plays for Bo Webster because of how Steve Smith and the Australian team management think this pitch is going to play.
There'll be 4 debuts in a row for the Australian men's test team, and 5 if you go back to the start of the home summer against India. They had to wait between Kuhneman and McSweeney. I guess it was the better part of 2 years, I suppose, for a debut, and then we've had them in a rush here, which often happens, isn't it, when a team's just tilting towards transition as this is. There's the opportunity to think and future-proof and all these other various cliches, and that's what they're able to do here with Connolly if they give him the start. It's not about this week necessarily, although of course he's not being gifted a baggy green. They want him to be part of the Australian setup. He's played short-form cricket for Australia already. He made 90 on Shield debut last year in a Shield final, which always counts for more. So this is a nod to the future, but they think someone who could have an immediate impact. I watched him bowl in the nets yesterday. He didn't look out of place at all. And they were very complimentary about the way he bowled in the training camp in Dubai as well a couple of weeks ago. So it's mostly for his batting, but he's impressed on site with his bowling too.
And speaking of people being in place, his parents are still in Galle. So they've been here from the start of the tour. We saw the reactions and the emotions from the Inglis family. Maybe it'll be another Western Australian family, one which hasn't moved from overseas anyway, which might be celebrating a test cap presentation to start with, a baggy green, and then who knows what Cooper Connolly does from there.
Another ton on debut. Are we going to predict it? Are we going to declare it here the day before the test? Not really, but that would be fun. If we'd have to wait a decade.
Maybe
for
a
that.
5-wicket haul on debut.
Yeah, something along those lines. As for Sri Lanka, the main news, and we'll come back to conditions in a sec, but the main news is that Dimuth Karunaratne, who was their long-term captain, we've had such an affinity with Frank Dimuth Karunaratne over the years on the final word, the pool party in the 2019 World Cup, and all the rest of it. He's decided to make his 100th Test match, his last Test match, 5th Sri Lankan to that milestone. A 3-time member of the ICC Test Team of the Year. There's 3 years when he was averaging in the 60s. It did feel like he was coming to the end. He said it himself in the presser that we were in then that this is a form decision. He thought about playing for longer, but he's realised that he's hit that point. So that self-awareness to pick this moment at the ground where he made his Test debut a long time ago.
Yeah, since 2015, nobody's made more Test runs as an opener. Nobody's scored as many hundreds as he has, I think 15 in all. And he's been the stabilizer for Sri Lanka, right? He's been the constant. He's almost been the security blanket for the Sri Lankan Test team throughout that period. And good old Franky, he's been part of some big moments for Sri Lanka as well. I mean, captaining them to that famous Test series win. I mean, he's still the only man only man from Asia to say, I won a Test series in South Africa. I mean, there have been so many Indian teams and Pakistani teams who've gone there and have been unsuccessful, but Dimuth got them over the line. Some brilliant individual achievements as well, hundreds in most parts of the world, like lots of runs at this ground. And he said one of the reasons he wanted to retire now is also to, bring that poetic, perfect end to his career. 100 tests, that too in Galle, where it all started for him. It's an interesting career because is he unsung? Maybe not, but test average just below 40. I think it's fallen off towards the end. Underrated, probably, but I think he's got his due in a way, right?
Yeah.
3, like I said, ICC Test match, 11 of the year. He was in there, and I mean, for a while there, you would think of him as being the most solid opener in Test cricket. At a time, pretty much every other team was looking for a stabilizing opener, and Dimuth was the one who kind of stood out for not just for Sri Lanka but in world cricket.
Not to forget the fact that he did make 100 on debut for my club in Dever Hills in the
Yes,
subbies
not
a
to
few
forget.
years ago.
Well, that's where he's going to be.
He's be back in Melbourne. Yeah, he signalled that he wants to go back to Melbourne, do his level 2 and become a coach, then return to be a servant to Sri Lankan cricket once again. He's been a magnificent one at that. So best of luck to Dimuth Karunaratne this week. The other news out of the Sri Lankan squad is that Pathum Nissanka, who was the match winner at the Oval against England last July, will return, having had the groin injury last week. So a genuine match winner. Nissanka, who's been a white ball world beater in the last couple of years, and a certain point of difference here in that they did look anemic up top last week. Karunaratne, as we mentioned before, form tailing off. Ashada Fernando will in all probability make way.
Yeah, he will, and you're right, Pathum Nissanka's not always got Test cricket. He's been in and out. He played against Australia 3 years ago, but he just looks like he's found his feet across all formats, and he can play all shots. Just on Karunaratne and Nissanka, as I was walking into the ground, Dimuth was having his final net on the eve of a Test. He's never going to have another eve of the Test again, and he was bang in the middle between Angelo Matthews and Pathum Nissanka, and I thought it was kind of touching. And the last shot he played, he just stepped out to the spinner and hit him over his head. Something he hasn't done a lot, but I thought it was a good way for him to finish his net session. But you're right, I think Pathum Nissanka adds that dynamism at the top, because I can see Dinesh Chandimal sitting there. He comes in at number 3, and like we saw last week, they'll all play their shots. But Nissanka could just give them the start that Head and Khawaja did for Australia.
And I wouldn't be surprised if Milan Ratnyaka comes in as well.
Yeah.
He bowled pretty well in England. He played a role in that victory at the Oval, picking up, I think the key wicket there was actually weirdly Gus Atkinson, who made 100 at Lords at the start of the series, and he went through him just as they were building momentum in that third innings when they rolled England cheaply. But not only that, it'll lengthen their batting. He made 71 on Test debut at Old Trafford last year, which was the highest score for a Sri Lankan number 9 on debut. So it may well be at the expense of a spinner. They might play the second seamer, which sounds counterintuitive, but it just might well be that they want some support for Asitha Fernando, who struggled as the sole seamer last week. and it could well be at the expense of Nishan Pires, who's had a really bad run. He's taken 4 wickets in his last 4 first-class games at an average of in excess of 100.
He has, and the only other way they could go is they brought Ramesh Mendes back into the squad, which
Yes,
was announced
yes.
this morning on the eve of the test. So maybe he just comes back in. It is his place that Nishan Pires took, so maybe Ramesh Mendes, who we saw quite a bit of 2-3 years ago, so maybe he comes back in. I mean, Jeffrey will have to stay, right? I mean, after his bowling and his half century. So, Prabhat Jayasuriya, Jeffrey Vandese, and probably Ramesh Mendes. And yeah, I think I would pick Ratnayake, because you're not going to expect too much from your seamers. And he bowls at a similar pace to what Fernando did, maybe slightly slower. But then he just gives you the batting, because Sri Lanka is batting after number 7, kind of just nosedive. So, that's the way they should go, I feel, but we'll wait and see.
All right, we're going to take a brief pause. Back in a moment with some more chat around Steve Smith, his formidable record in Asia, and casting forward to tomorrow. Here's the Final Word Daily. Adam Collins, Bharat Sundaresan with you. Maurice Blackburn Lawyers. Hey, I'm going to read some notes out off my phone. We'll get better at this particular bit as we go. Okay. So Maurice Blackburn Lawyers, we've told you all about how they're the #1 plaintiff law firm in Australia, but consider whether you might have to stop work due to injury or illness, and how you might be able to claim insurance benefits through superannuation. So there might be access to large lump sum payments just waiting for you to claim through your super insurance. That's right. Most people don't know that if you can't work due to injury or illness, you're usually automatically covered by insurance through your super fund. It's called Total and Permanent Disability Benefit, or TPD lump sum benefit. Claiming that insurance is completely separate from your superannuation balance. So most of the time, you just need to show that you cannot work in your usual job because of your illness or injury. Almost everyone who's a member of a super fund in Australia is automatically insured for TPD insurance, but most people don't know what TPD insurance is or what it covers. The average payment received by Maurice Blackburn clients in the last 3 years was $160,000. So Maurice Blackburn want more people to know about their super insurance, because it can really help you and your family when you need it most. So we'll learn more about that. We'll go on that journey, and we'll relay that message to you with Maurice Blackburn, Australia's #1 plaintiff law firm. Baz, Steve Smith, his numbers in Asia are outstanding. He's 16 runs away from overtaking Ricky Ponting for runs in Asia for Australians. He's equal with Alan Border for 6 centuries in this part of the world as well. When we spoke to him at Ahmedabad a couple of years ago, before the final test match, which he was captaining, he was quite strident that it was going to be his final test in India, and he couldn't really conceive of going around for 4 more years. Well, I guess we're at the halfway mark of that cycle now. My instinct is that Smith's never felt, never felt might be an exaggeration, but in recent times, never felt happier at doing what he's doing. He's in all probability going to captain Australia at the Champions Trophy. News today that Pat Cummins will miss that tournament via Andrew McDonald. So with Smith getting the chance to lead in the short term, but the chance to go back to India one more time, I don't think it's inconceivable that he plays the Border Gavaskar in 2027.
Well, 39-year-old Nathan Lyon, 37-year-old Steve Smith, it doesn't sound that bad, does it? Nathan Lyon has made it very clear he wants to be there. And just like Lyon would be re-energized and revitalized with having Todd Murphy and Matthew Kuhneman there, because for the longest time, every time Lyon went to Asia, he had to shoulder so much of the burden of winning test matches for Australia. And every tour he went to, he had a different spinner alongside him, whether it was Steve O'Keefe or John Holland or so many others, Mitchell Swepson and many others. But now back-to-back turning pitches that they played on. Indore, he had Murphy and Kuhneman. 2 years on, Galle, he had Murphy and Kuhneman. So there's some stability. So you can see Australia now having this 3-headed monster, spin monster that they can depend on to win in India. And again, similarly, that could re-energize Steve Smith and revitalize his hopes of doing something which neither him nor Lyon or none of this generation of Australian cricketers have been able to do, which is win a series in India and 5 matches as well. That would be a great way for him to finish as well, I feel.
I reckon it's a huge final frontier energy with Steve Waugh now in 2004. Like, you kind of forget that Smith was out here in India in 2010 as well as the spare bat. So it's like an odyssey with him in Asia. He's enjoyed lots of individual success at times, thinking specifically about 2017 when he rattled off 300s in 4 matches. But yeah, I'm drawn into the romance of Smith coming back to this part of the world and this not being his final test in Asia, despite the fact that he's got some big milestones in the offing this week.
And if he does, I wouldn't be I mean, I wouldn't mind him captaining Australia. I mean, just you've seen how much he loves captaining here. I did some stats crunching as well. So 5 of those 600s you mentioned have come when he's been captain.
Yep.
2 of which, I think he's captained in 12 tests in Asia, 4 wins, and on 4 famous wins as well. Indore, Pune, Chittagong or Chattogram, and here the other day. And he's made 200s in the famous one in Pune. I mean, that was such an extraordinary innings. And an equally good one here. I mean, that was brilliant as well the other day or last week. So, Smith in India one more time, and probably I'd be surprised if they'll give the captaincy to him unless something really dramatic happens. But why not? He just enjoys doing it so much.
Last time we were here in Sri Lanka in 2022, the home side found a way to fight back. It was their national day yesterday, a bit of colour from tour. I was with about 150 tuk-tuks as they lined up on a field about 200 metres from here, just outside the fort walls, when they were revving their engines and flags waving and hanging out the windows. It looked like it was a tuk-tuk roller derby of sorts. Thankfully, no one ran into each other, but they managed to find a way then. Who would doubt this Sri Lankan side in Karunaratne's final test match? We've got a game to play as well. We've got the media game this afternoon. We played for Oval Dream Boys a couple of days ago. Media game this afternoon up at Richmond College, which is the school where the Sri Lankan captain Dhananjaya De Silva went. So,
and Kamindu Mendes as well.
Kamindu Mendes as well, and
Suranga
as well.
Suranga
Suranga Lakmal, spot on. So a school will play on the mats. We'll enjoy that, and we'll report back faithfully tomorrow when this second test match starts here. Our coverage thanks to CBUS Super, cbussuper.com.au. We'll tell you more about them during the week, and Maurice Blackburn as well. Thank you to everybody who's with us on Patreon, who's been helping us charge towards Murali 800. Had someone say to me the other day they want to be our 800th patron. The only way we get there is by chipping away, so help us do it this week. That would be a lovely thing to pull level with Murali. Thank you, Baz. I'll catch you on the roof here tomorrow, as we will you on the Final Word Daily. Bye-bye.